Strategy Show. And no, I'm not Josh Engelman. It's Dave Lochran with me, Ben Rasa. Josh Engelman's off somewhere. I don't know. I think he's out of town until Sunday, but we got you covered. We're going to break down today's 10-game slate. Before I ask Ben how he's doing, I want to let you know that Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports is the sponsor of the NBA Strategy Show, the only place where you can become a baller. Also, the only place where you can get up to $30 in YSRPs, those Yahoo Sports rewards points, simply by signing up with us at awesemo.com. Go to awesemo.com. Click on the NFL tab. This is the easiest way to do it, I promise you. You'll see the articles link right there on the drop-down. Click articles on the NFL drop-down. And the first article you'll see, second article you'll see is the showdown link. It's from yesterday, but that doesn't matter. You click on that and scroll down a tiny bit. The Yahoo link is right there, and it'll take you to Yahoo. Use the sign-up code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, when you sign up. Get your $30 in YSRPs. It's actually at the bottom of this article, so scroll down to the bottom of the showdown article. It's totally free. You can read them every time, too, even if you're not a premium subscriber. Use that. Get your $30 in YSRPs. As good as cash to be used on the site to play and win real money. $200,000 NFL baller this week. And they got a $50K NBA baller today. Yahoo's stepping it up, doing big things over there. If you get in early enough, you also have some management-free contests where everything paid in by the player gets paid back out to the player. It's Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. Proud sponsor. I think they're proud, Ben, of the NBA Strategy Show. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. Happy Friday. Nice 10 games. Pretty good slate. So excited to hop on as Josh goes. Yeah, he's out of commission for a few days.
You got a pretty serious workload in terms of shows today.
Today's like that old baseball Tom Unansky back-to-back style. So yeah, I got 3. I'll be covering this, the NFL, betting. We got it all covered. It'll be a fun morning.
Yeah, stick around on our YouTube channel. You're going to see a lot of Ben today, but can't beat that. Got a lot coming up throughout the day, take you into the weekend. But first, 10 games here for the NBA Strategy Show. And happy to have you guys with us, as always. We like hanging out in the morning, man. No better way to get it started. I don't know if you drink coffee. I drink Red Bull. It's not healthy, Ben. My wife's trying to get me to stop, and every time I think I find an alternative, I find myself crawling back.
Yeah, I could see. I mean, I've met you a few times. I know you're a Red Bull guy. You don't drink coffee?
You know what's funny? I have a pretty serious history with substances, if you know what I mean. Many years ago.
I do.
Decade plus, right? But amazingly, I get like shaky from coffee.
Oh, so do I. I don't drink coffee for what it's worth.
You don't?
But
do you just wake up and you're good?
Yeah, but I'm a morning person. Like you should see me at like 11. If I'm not out at like 11 o'clock, I'm just shot if I'm in my apartment.
Really? So you can just wake up. See, I've never understood that somebody could just wake up and be okay.
I mean, I don't know if you would define this as okay, but I do wake up in this state. It's like 6 a.m. No problem.
That's right. Cantor says, Laffy, she won the smoking battle. She'll win this one too. I don't know what Laffy you're talking to. I just smoked a cigarette 30 seconds ago. I wish she won the smoking battle. Anyway, you ready to get started?
Let's do it.
All right, man. Let's dive right into it. We've got 10 games to touch on. Dan Strafford and I did the Early Bird podcast last night. You can check that out as well. So I got a bit of a head start on this, and we'll go game by game. But one interesting thing about this slate is, like, Giannis is the greatest player on planet Earth. Okay, you would agree with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Team Luka guy, but yes, I would agree with that.
You can't put him. You can't crown him yet.
No, you can't.
I mean, you could argue that it's still LeBron, and I probably wouldn't fight you on that. But I think like the best player right now in terms of overall abilities is Giannis. Besides the point, there's no reason he should be 11-3 on DraftKings. I feel like even against the Clippers, that stands out to me on a day where there aren't that many high-end options.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, honestly, I'm not a big, as I don't think you should be, I'm not a big game log guy, but it tells the story. They've been blowing teams out by legitimately 40 points.
Insane.
Obviously, I saw one of those firsthand with the Knicks, but, Giannis is just chilling right now. Low 20s, 20 minutes against Charlotte. He hasn't had to do anything, and it almost feels like he's got a price discount. I know the matchup factors in, but these blowouts factor in as well. And that is just, it's hard to ignore 11-3 when we were paying, 12 plus not that long ago.
So I think a lot of the slate comes down to that. We'll get into it. Let's start with Charlotte and Brooklyn. You've got two bad basketball teams. Kyrie Irving will also remain out for this one. I expect to see a fair amount of scoring in this one. I don't see why you wouldn't. Two defenses that have underwhelmed, to say the least. Over-under on this one is 218, and the Nets are 2.5-point road favorites with a 110 implied total, 107.5 for the Charlotte Hornets. What are you thinking here when it comes to the Charlotte Hornets? Can we get back to somebody like Devontae Graham, who's been, nothing short of spectacular, really? He's only point guard eligible now, which is kind of strange given how flippantly DraftKings just throws positional designations around. But the $8,300 on DraftKings, it does seem like a lot. He has been very good, though. It is the Nets. He's $8,400 on FanDuel, and over on Yahoo, you got Devontae Graham weighing in at $30, which is just silly.
Yeah, that's a little much. And honestly, I feel like it's a little much across the board. We have 10 games. I will say Charlotte's been a lot better than I thought. I know they're not a good team, but I had them destined for the basement.
Yeah.
And they're not there just yet. Devontae Graham.
Because of Graham.
Exactly. He is seriously the catalyst. He's not going to be hitting 10 threes in every game, but he's shown, the minutes are going to be there. The volume is going to be there. I just don't know if I want to pay an opportunity cost of that type of price. You have someone in this game, Spencer Dinwiddie, who's also going to be shouldering a ton of work considering the Nets are really out of point guards here to distribute. So I don't think I'll get to Graham. I get it. I wouldn't fault you for it if you like him, but probably not a priority for me.
Not a priority for me outside of Yahoo. I think $30 on Yahoo is really crazy, given that. Let me put this in context for you. He's the same price as Montrezl Harrell on Yahoo.
Yeah, and again, this is why we preach, especially in a sport like basketball where we can really accurately project minutes and things like that. You can shop around and the price is going to open it up on certain spots. So I totally get that. But on a site like DraftKings, just a little much at 8-3.
It is. And he's been really good. I could actually see this being one of those games where you end up where you end up having some really solid lineups from with players on both sides. You mentioned Spencer Dinwiddie. He's been really good. And with Kyrie Irving out, he's going to continue to shoulder a huge workload, as you pointed out. He's played 34 plus minutes in 3 straight games. This one should stay competitive. I know Graham's a little bit pricey for you, but are you willing to get to Spencer Dinwiddie, whose price has come up, but he does, for the most part, seem to have been, honoring that price tag at 82 on DraftKings, 85 on FanDuel. And I'm not going to mention price tags for everyone, I promise, but this one's kind of necessary. $38 on Yahoo.
Yeah, I'm a little more comfortable with Dinwiddie, just kind of when you look at everything. The minutes we know are going to be secure. In terms of field goal attempts, he's going to be taking around 20 each and every game. And he's also tasked with distributing the ball. He can add in peripherals. So in addition to having the floor, he's shown, at that price, there's still room in a ceiling. Now with 10 games, and I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, you're not going to be forced to do anything you don't want to. You have multiple guys at multiple price points, basically anywhere. But for me, specifically in this game and looking at that price point, I would go Dinwiddie before I went Graham.
Okay. I would too, but I don't mind either of them. The problem is that you're going to be, putting a lot of salary towards this game in the event that you do, but I don't have an issue with it. What are your thinking, or what is your thinking on the rest of this team or the rest of this game, really? Taurean Prince, his price tag has come up. I had a lot of him against Atlanta, but that was at 5,800. Now on DraftKings, he's 6,500. That price tag is beginning to see a pretty significant rise. And then you've got guys like Garrett Temple, whose prices are way up. I never thought I'd see him that high again. PJ Washington on the other side. Jarrett Allen has been really good this season, but you still can't rely on him to ever play 30 minutes. And sometimes if DeAndre Jordan's playing well, you're only going to get 24, 25 minutes from him. He's up to 7,200. So this whole game, I won't say the entirety of it is priced up, but because a lot of these guys actually have been producing, you're not getting a discount on anything here.
No, you're really not. And you kind of highlighted it, guys like Prince, Temple, in addition to being overpriced, especially in recent times, they've been shooting really well. And that's, I don't want to say it's a red flag, but it's almost like you're seeing their ceiling in a way,
Sure.
and there's not that much room. If I had to take another guy, it would be Jared Allen, just because you mentioned, honestly, the minutes being unreliable, that impacts the floor and he could crash and burn. But if he does get, say 30 minutes in this game, there's no doubt, a double-double is very likely, and he can really explode even on a 7-2 price tag. So that'd be the one spot in tournaments that I'd be willing to roll the dice on.
Okay. It's a good point you make too, because if you look at Spencer Dinwiddie, there's actually still room for those ceiling games at this price, because he's shooting, 45%, 40% over his last 5 or 6 games. It's not like he's knocking down all of his shots. So you're getting a ton of shot volume, right? You're averaging like 20 field goal attempts per game since Kyrie Irving went out. But he hasn't had that one yet where he's just dead on and knocks down like 60% of his shots.
No, I mean, I think we saw an inkling of that against Boston, and he returned 65 fantasy points. He was 6 for 8 for 3. Obviously, he's not going to be doing that every night, but that just shows what happens when he does. Whereas you have guys like Temple and Prince, they've been doing that recently. And yes, they've been returning good performances, but you literally need that to continue. And that is a huge ask.
Yeah. And I don't think I can get there. It is a good matchup, but on both sides, but I still think there's better spots to be. You want to move on to Cleveland and Orlando?
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right. So you shouldn't be surprised that this game has the second lowest total on the slate of the games that we actually have lines on. 211.5. Cleveland 3.5 point dogs at home, 104 implied, 107.5 for the Orlando Magic. Starting with the Cleveland side of the ball, you are getting some cheaper price points on guys like Kevin Love. They got smoked last game, but the game prior to that, where they lost by only 9, he played 31 minutes. So does Kevin Love get back to 30 minutes? That's a question worth asking, because if he does, I think he's fine there against an Orlando team that defensively has been very good, but he is cheap, even though I have a lot of respect for what Jonathan Isaac has done on defense. Tristan Thompson, also probable for this one. He's got that Q tag, but he's expected to play. And then really, outside of that, I don't know if there's ever anything else to even talk about from the front court or the wing players for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to say. The guy who stuck out the most was Kevin Love, for the reasons you really talked about. If we can, the goal here is to try to nail those minutes. If we know, okay, this is going to be what we saw against Milwaukee, 6,800 on DraftKings and reasonable price across the industry, I'm definitely willing to take that plunge. Now, if it's not and he's in the 20s, you have a pretty narrow path. And if I knew that, it would be a pretty easy pass on a 10-game slate. I don't know if I'll get to Tristan Thompson in much capacity, honestly. The minutes are secure, but I don't know how high that ceiling is. You mentioned it's not the best game environment. And honestly, Cleveland's just not a team that really stands out in really any major way to me.
Okay. Me neither. I don't really have much at all. With the Orlando side of the ball, though, do you get to a Kem Birch, who's been playing, really been on pace to play 30 minutes in most games? He fouled out in 2 of his last 4. The game prior to that was a blowout, so he lost a little bit of run at the end of it. He's basically coming in at the same price as Mo Wagner, who we'll get to in a little bit. Actually, we'll get to in 2 games from now. So you're probably going to see, I'm assuming Wagner's going to be pretty popular. I don't think Birch will be at all. I don't think it's the craziest pivot in tournaments if you wanted to get a little bit different. But does anything stand out on the Magic side of the ball?
No, the Magic, obviously Birch, he's playing, I'll be honest, I was brushing up on the slate before. I was actually pretty surprised. He's playing more minutes than I realized.
Yeah, he's been on pace for 30 pretty much every game if blowouts and foul trouble didn't get in the way.
Yeah, and that's, you can certainly live with that. Now, he doesn't do much with those minutes. He's going to give you some boards. He needs to get those double-doubles. That's really what's been killing him. 7 points, just get a couple more points, guy.
Right.
Uh, I mean, just come on, just get 10 points. It's really not that hard if you're that tall. Aaron Gordon is someone who, I looked at, but again, I don't think it's this is an automatic thing. But you look at like what he did against the Suns, and it was, oh man, he crushed it. Yeah, it was 13 for 15 from the field, 5 for 5 from three. If you can't crush it when doing that, I don't know what to tell you. So at almost 7,000, I think he's in play. But again, I'm not really forcing myself to go there with so many other matchups.
So I guess this is another game that really doesn't have a lot. I haven't been afraid to target Orlando lately, but one of the things I don't like is they're all, not all of them, but a lot of these guys are starting to be priced around their ceiling. And, Markelle Fultz, how far are you willing to go on Markelle Fultz? It feels like his max fantasy potential's like 35 fantasy points.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've seen. Again, I'm going to stick with the theme of what I'm talking about. In a good shooting game, that's what you're looking at. And yes, that's a quality for 5,600, but it's not a slate breaking performance. And there's so many guys on this slate where there are windows, in my opinion, to that monster game where Fultz may have a decent floor. The minutes are going to be there. Field goals attempts are pretty steady, but I just don't know how big the range of outcomes is. And with 10 games, you really have to consider that with each and every play.
Absolutely. And we'll let you know when ownership rolls in what we're getting on this game. But Ben, my guess is this game will be, pretty widely overlooked and for good reason.
It should be. Yeah. In my opinion.
For good reason. Yeah. The one guy I'll just mention before we move on, Jonathan Isaac, specifically on DraftKings, is $6,400. He has not looked great lately, but we saw him play 37 minutes in a competitive game against Washington on the 4th of December, 2 days ago, against the Phoenix Suns. That game ended up getting out of hand, and a lot of the starters didn't come back in. So I think when you look at his minutes here, you had Isaac come in and play only 4 minutes in the 4th. So I would say you probably get another 33 minutes from him today, because in that game he played 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 minutes in the first half, and then he played 9 minutes in the third quarter. I'm giving him 32 minutes today. Feel okay about that. At 6,400 against Cleveland, that's not a spot I'm afraid to get to, but I don't think there's any priorities here. Are there any priorities from Detroit and Indiana, where we've got a total of 213, another one of the lower ones on the day? Pistons are 2.5-point dogs at home. 105.3 implied for them, 107.8 for the Indiana Pacers. It feels like, maybe I'm wrong, it feels like every time the Pistons are on the schedule, they face the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
This is their fourth time meeting this season. They play each other 4 times, right? I would think.
I don't know exactly how the schedule works, but I believe that's right.
Yeah.
It's like 4, and then I think you play the other conference too.
Correct, you do, yeah. So, dude, this is their 4th and final game against each other this season. That's crazy.
Yeah, malice at the palace, always a chance. Again, it's not a game. We're going to get to some games that I do really like players. Most of my interest here is in the front court, whether it be Sabonis for the Pacers. I think that price is pretty reasonable, playing well. Minutes should be secure, pending he stays out of foul trouble. I think he makes for a fine play. The guy I wanted to ask you about, and I know he's pricey, and that's really the problem, is Drummond. I liked him, but man, 9,400 on DraftKings. I don't know how much I'll get there, just because it'll depend, and I don't want to jump around. Obviously, Ish Smith is going to be very polarizing. How much value opens up for a guy like Drummond, in my opinion? But he's someone are you really high on him, or are you kind of indifferent based on what we say?
I'm not indifferent, but I'm not very high on him. I'm in the middle. There are a couple things about Drummond I really like. I mentioned this with Dan Strafford on the Early Bird today, and I'll tell you what it was. When you look at Andre Drummond's ability to produce stocks, steals, and blocks, it's so much better than anyone ever gives him credit for. For example, this year, he's averaging 2 blocks and 1.7 steals per game. Last year, 1.7 blocks, 1.7 steals. Year before that, 1.6, 1.5, 1.1, 1.5, 1.4, 1.5. That's crazy production, man. You're getting like upwards of 8 fantasy points per game just on stocks alone out of Andre Drummond. And that hasn't slowed down at all. Look at last game, 5 stocks. The game before that, 9, 5 steals, 4 blocks, then 4 and 3. It's not going to happen every game, but it is nice to know that he's the type of player that can give you, 25 and 15, or say even 20 and 20, and then 4 blocks and 2 steals along with 5 assists mixed in along the way. So that's why I just think that he is one of these players that can give you those big ceiling games, those high upside games. And he's also in competitive contest playing a ton of minutes. There's also not a ton of high-priced guys on this slate. So, Andre Drummond gives you another 37 minutes. You're probably getting a really strong outing from him at a decent price point.
Yeah, I mean, that's well said by you. And you can take it both ways. We know how good that impacts his ceiling, but I'll say on the other side, it's nice to have a guy that, even in a game where he's a little off, he can bail you out with an outlier performance
For
to
sure.
steals and blocks. He chips in 7, 8 of those. If he has, 18 and 8, that's not what you're looking for. But when you add in 8 of those, it can make up for what would be, a death sentence on most slates.
Legalized. Thanks for the super chat, brother. We appreciate you hanging out with us every day. Outside of him, though, it's kind of ugly. Blake Griffin, his rebounding outside of last game has really been disastrous. It's good to see him getting back on pace there a little bit. Shot 4 for 17. Are you in a position where it's like something has to give with Blake and you're willing to run him out there at what I think we should be considering a discount, even though he's played poorly? Or are you just not on Blake Griffin?
So I think I'm more in the former, where I'm saying, okay, unless this guy is just not what he was, this price, it's getting to the point where even I'm willing to buy.
Sure.
Maybe I have to live through a couple inefficient games. But you know what? 4 of 17, that shows exactly kind of what we're dealing with. And I think that's a positive, because if he's going to take 17 shots at 6,700 on DraftKings and a reasonable price across the industry, there's got to be some ceiling there. Now, maybe we'll find out that he's not turning a corner and he's just not where he's accustomed to be priced. But I wouldn't be stunned to see his price start to rebound in a positive way.
Me too. I don't really find the need to play him alongside Drummond today just because we have 10 games. But I do think Blake is fine. And it's only a matter of like you said, if he's totally a shell of his old self and there's like just nothing left, then fine. But there's nothing that should lead us to believe that he's not still a decent player. So
no. And if we find out that it's not that, it's going to be too late. Once the price adjusts,
right,
the time to buy is right now. So you can either try to be early and take the risk, or you can wait and see. But if you wait and see, there's no way to get that time back.
Exactly. So the rest of this team, the only thing here that we're waiting on is Luke Kennard. He's not okay. So he's not on the injury report now. That came out, I guess, last night. So Luke Kennard not on the injury report. Now we don't have to worry about Mikhailuk or anybody here. I would have been an ugly situation anyway that I don't think either of us were looking to target anyone in Luke Kennard's stead.
Yeah, no, that's not something that's going to have a major impact on what I do. Really, this game is another one where the high-level plays I have some interest in. I don't see a ton else to really talk about, though, to be honest.
No, I don't think so either. And then on the other side, Sabonis is always fine. But I definitely do have some concerns about the fact that, the 3 games that they've faced each other so far, none of them have been with Blake Griffin. Domantas Sabonis has been a very good player this season. He's one of the top in the league in rebound chances per game, which is encouraging. But this is also a more difficult game to get rebounds. And he's done a good job of it against the Pistons this season. I'm sure he's still solid. But I don't know if I can prioritize him. When it comes to the position, power forward, center, is Sabonis a top option for you, or are you just somebody that if you get in lineups, you're okay with it, but you're not forcing anything?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it, but I'll just, and again, I know we're jumping around a little. I like Paul George quite a bit. Same price on DraftKings, 7,800. So my exposure there, priority is going to be Paul George rather than Sabonis.
Okay. Before we move on, any thoughts on Malcolm Brogdon here coming in at a pretty affordable price point? And actually, I would argue he's definitely underpriced on DraftKings. The one reason for this isn't because he's been amazing recently, $8,100 on FanDuel is also really nice. And on Yahoo, $31 is great. But the one thing I like about him is we saw that in competitive games recently, not all of them, but he had the upside to play 38 minutes. And that's encouraging. If it's $7,300 or $31 on Yahoo, Brogdon in a close game can give you 36, 37 minutes. That just makes him all that more appealing.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a pretty good floor play, kind of cashy to me in a way. I don't think he's going to kill your lineups. Not sure how high that ceiling is. So in a perfect world, I'd probably find the money to go get Dinwiddie, honestly, or bump down even. But you know what? Brogdon is someone I think in really and this is why I preach. You're building a lineup with 8 guys, but it has to come together in the right pieces. So if you have a very aggressive lineup elsewhere, taking some stability with Brogdon at a reasonable price tag, I think is completely fine.
Okay. Miami and Washington. I just saw a comment in chat about lock in Bam Adebayo. I do want to discuss that a little bit though, because Bam Adebayo, after Wednesday's game, said that his right foot hurt. I'm going to read this to you from Roto World. Last night with Dan, I was absolutely confused as to what any of this meant. But first, this game has a slate high 234 total. The Heat are 10-point favorites with a 122 implied, 112 for Washington. Mind you, the Wizards played at home in the nation's capital yesterday and then had to fly to Miami to play their second of a back-to-back. It's crazy. But Adebayo, and I'll throw this to you, he said that his right foot hurt after Wednesday's loss to Boston. He says, to be clear, this is Roto World's opinion on it now. To be clear, there's no cause for concern. Tell me if you understand at all what they're trying to say here, Ben. The injury was used as an anecdote in a story about the Heat. Not a real injury report, but it's still worth mentioning. So, okay, they're quelling my concerns. And then they go on to say, he was spotted icing his foot after the game, and when asked what happened, he replied, I have no idea, bro. It just hurts. We'll let you know if he surfaces on the injury report. So, an anecdote about the story in a story about the Heat. What does that mean? Not a big deal. And then he says, no idea. It just hurts. And he's icing his foot after the game.
I didn't know any of this. Not going to lie. I missed that. And this is his third game in 4 days. Yeah, it seems like something. And I don't know if that's how I would word that, to be honest. That is something to monitor. Now, he has no anything on the sites that I see, but man, that's something to keep an eye on. This is I don't want to say it's the most interesting game, but there was a lot of if statements with what we're going to talk about in this game on both sides. There's a lot of guys that may or may not play. You mentioned the Wizards played yesterday, a game that I definitely have some pieces to, but it all depends on who is in and who is out.
Yeah. I love Bam if he's healthy, right? Like
or not to.
What a good spot. If he's okay. You got Mo Wagner and Rui Hachimura, and I don't see how he doesn't just dominate them on the boards, in the pick and roll as your roll man. All of that to me has got to put him as a top option at what I find to be a pretty respectable price point. And you have to think, maybe I'm wrong. Let me just make sure I didn't miss this on the injury report, because I had mentioned last night that I was pretty confident in it, that Jan Mahinmi doesn't play the second of a back-to-back after missing the entirety of the season thus far with that Achilles. So far, there's nothing on him, but I don't know. I have trouble believing second of a back-to-back traveling on the road where he played his first game that he's in action today, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I'll say this. Rui Hachimura, they're not that they need to be careful, but my God, 43 minutes last night.
Crazy.
Serious run there. This, you're going to have to, you don't have to do anything on a 10-game slate, but it's very interesting to target this front court for the Wizards. I mean, you've got Hachimura, you've got Burtons. You mentioned Wagner. Other than that, I mean, obviously this guy's not in play. I don't know if Admiral Schofield will be in the rotation to accumulate those Mahinmi minutes, or if they're going to try to distribute them amongst the guys I just mentioned. If that's the case, these guys are in serious play with the volume they're going to say.
Absolutely. And that was my thing too, is Will Schofield come in and get some minutes like we saw the other day? But that was also in a spot where where Wagner was out. So I don't know if I'm projecting minutes here, and let's say I don't think Mahinmi plays, you almost have to give Wagner like 35 minutes.
Yeah, and that's massive. I mean, that would be and I don't think you're wrong. I really don't. Someone's going to have to take these minutes. But that is a huge bump for him at flat 5K. He's going to be popular, but I see that appeal. And on a second game of a back-to-back, it's hard to imagine that they it would just be unnecessary for them to roll Mahinmi in this spot.
So if you're looking at the minutes from yesterday, let's just go over these real quick. Before we do, let me ask you about the rest of this Heat team, because it'll take us a second for Washington. Jimmy Butler's been spectacular recently, and he's still not – he was priced way below where he should be, but he's still not crazily priced really anywhere, even on FanDuel with how he's played. And now you're facing a Washington team that, I've said this a lot, they make for the best matchup for fantasy purposes, hands down. Here's why. They play at the league's fastest pace. They have the league's worst defensive rating. But to make it even more appealing, Ben, they're also fourth in the league in offensive rating. So their defense is terrible. They play at a lightning fast pace, but they're also keeping games competitive a lot. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I'll be honest, I do all these sports, but I always kind of think in a football mentality, and it's, we always preach, it's great to have a real bad defense, but it's even better when your offense can keep pace and force back and forth. And that's kind of what we have in a game like this. Now, Jimmy Butler's been fantastic. Do you have any word about Justice Winslow? I know he's questionable.
So last I've seen, he's still questionable in this one. If he's out, well, you can go ahead and talk about the implications there, but I'd say they're pretty significant knowing that Goran Dragic has also already been ruled out.
Absolutely. I mean, we know Butler is secure, but you've got guys like Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, and Nunn. These are guys at very affordable price tags, given the workload that they could see. I kind of am partial to Hero. I don't know if that's just a gut feel. Duncan Robinson, he's been playing very well, but he's also been, he's shooting like 60% from three lately. That's a little much for me.
Totally unsustainable. No real good rebounding outside of one game either.
Yeah, and Hero we know can get crazy hot. So keep an eye on Winslow, but I like Jimmy Butler regardless. And then I know I'm jumping between the teams. I also like Bradley Beal quite a bit in this game. He's just playing fantastic, and his price is not as high as I thought it would be.
Yeah, dude, his price is way too low, as a matter of fact. I pointed out on the deeper dive yesterday that in games decided by 10 or fewer points, Bradley Beal's averaging 40 minutes per game. I'll keep giving that one out because it's a crazy number. And there was someone on Twitter yesterday that was upset about Beal, and I think this was at like halftime. He ended up, in context of the slate and his price tag on DraftKings, 44, not bad, not great though. Generally, that's one of the worst games you'll see from him at 38 minutes. But with Thomas Bryant off the court, he's been producing like 1.28 fantasy points per minute with 34% usage. I'm not a blowout person. I generally try and stay away from that. I do worry though, Ben, that second of a back-to-back in Miami, who knows if they landed straight at the strip club, just had the plane pull up to the door. I'm not being serious there, but there are some concerns against a good Miami team. Like, are they just going to get their doors blown off early in this game coming off of a big win yesterday over the Sixers? It feels like the recipe, like a perfect recipe for a game where they just get demolished.
Yeah, I mean, the Heat are undefeated at home. They've been very strong there, and I worry about that to an extent, but at the same time, these are guys that I really like, so I'm going to take the plunge on. And I'll just say this. Yes, Bradley Beal, 8,700 in return, 44 DraftKings points. That's not great. He was 7 of 24 from the field.
Exactly.
Though. If you told me he was 7 of 24 and he 5x'd, I would be running to the bank to take that. Like, that's as bad as it's going to get. He shot 29% from the field. So, I mean, what are you really looking for when you have a game like that? That's not going to happen too often, and you got to live with that.
Yep. And he had no steals, no blocks, 4 assists, which is well below his season average. Of course, his rebounding totals were up, but
Yeah.
I said the same thing to this guy who mentioned on Twitter. He came around afterwards. He's like, yeah, not too bad. But 38 minutes, 24 field goal attempts, $8,700 in a game with a 235 total. I don't care what the results are. You see numbers like that, there's no reason you don't go right back to the well.
Absolutely. And then, I mean, the obvious last thing that I have to mention for this game is we'll see what's up with Isaiah Thomas. Ish Smith is a clear, I mean, underpriced, very popular option. If we get word he's going to have massive run.
For sure. Yeah, I'll be keeping a close eye on this situation because Isaiah Thomas, I mean, that's really huge here. I think I had 100% Ish Smith last night, which was, I understand, very risky. But I couldn't, the only way I got less is if I projected him for less minutes. But like I felt pretty confident. I had him at 33 minutes. I felt pretty confident that he would get those minutes with Isaiah Thomas out. Unless this game gets out of hand, I'll probably have Ish Smith at, I know he played 34, but I'll probably put him at around 33 minutes again. And if that's the case, there's just, first of all, yesterday is like one of the best games you're going to get from Ish Smith. Let's be clear about that. You know, around the fantasy point per minute, just be happy with it. But with those many minutes, even if it's a tough matchup, you don't fade a guy that has ball handling responsibilities and plays 30 plus minutes in a game with a 235 total.
Yep. I mean, there are certain spots, I'm not saying you have to use him on every team, but he's in the best spot and he's going to be mega popular, but he opens up a ton. And, you know, it's hard to imagine that he doesn't get the opportunities to just smash that price tag.
Right. And, if you're looking at yesterday, you know, what was the touch distribution looking like? He had 68 touches. Bradley Beal had 81. Rui Hachimura, this is really interesting, had 76. He was second on the team in touches, just to give you an idea of, you know, involvement. Now, to be fair, Hachimura played all but like 6 minutes or something. He was on the field for an incredible amount of time. But I still find that fascinating that we're probably, well, let me ask you this. With Hachimura yesterday, is there, and potential assist, Ish Smith had 11, Beal had 13, so we'll take that. Is there merit to going back there, especially if Jan Mahimi sits? Do you think we're going to get huge minutes again from him and from Davis Bertans?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I don't think we're going to see those minutes, you know, 40, 42, 43 minutes, I think is a little much. And I do worry, you know, second of a back-to-back, it should be quelled a little. But if Mahimi sits, they don't have, as we just talked about, they don't have that many options. So these guys are going to be forced into it. Yes, Wagner is going to take some. And if you do think he can get into the mid-30s, that could take some minutes. But at the same time, all of these guys are going to be very busy. And at their price tags, they will have plenty of run to get there.
For sure. Jake says, I don't know, Ish really slowed down in the second half. I mean, not really. I'm pretty sure he had like 18 in the first half and 15 in the second half. Yeah.
And when you're 3,600, you just don't need that much.
Right.
But
he may have even had 20 in the first half and 13 in the second half. But I mean, it's really not a huge concern of mine at all when you're getting opportunities. He's close to minimum salary. Like, Ben, it all comes down to if a guy is literally the second most involved player on your team from a facilitating, playmaking standpoint, bringing the ball up the court at 3,600, you'd be hard pressed to find reasons not to fade him or not to play him outside of ownership.
That's exactly what I was going to say. If you don't want to play him and you say, you know what, I want to be different than a large, you know, percentage of the field, I get that. I still think on merit, it's just easier to leverage somewhere else with a guy who's 3,600. And if he has another game like last night, it's almost a given that he's going to be, you know, a very pertinent part of the optimal.
For sure. And look, I'll take pretty big stands on guys if I feel strongly. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. But I had 0% Emmanuel Mudiay the other day, and I think I had around 100-ish yesterday. I also had a ton of Cheikh Diallo not yesterday, but the game before that. And I got super lucky with the blowout, But Frank Kaminsky got off to a roaring start, and Diallo played only 4 minutes in the first half. So, that ended up working in my favor, but it probably shouldn't have. But if you feel strongly about something, I'm not saying you got to go 0 or 100, but there are spots where if you feel strongly that something's going to go the way you expect it to, then go ahead and do that. But Ben, I would caution one thing, just talking strategy for a quick second here. One thing I would say is if you're doing that, make sure the reason you're doing it is based in logic and not just gut feeling.
Oh, absolutely. And again, I think the most important point is it's like, what are we doing with Ish? Are we playing him 100% or are we completely fading him? Like, well, the answer is most likely nuanced. Like, if you don't have a great feel, you lean on our ownership projections and you can cancel him and let your slate be defined by other players. I do that all the time with chalk where I'm like, you know what? I don't know exactly what to do here. Let me come in very similar to the field. And then I have a very strong stance somewhere else. I'll let that define my slate. You don't need Ish Smith to be the defining guy of your slate if you don't want him to be.
For sure. Anything else on this game?
No, I think keep an eye on the injuries. That really is going to determine the priorities for me amongst both the Wizards and the Heat.
All right, let's talk Boston and Denver. Man, Denver has just not been a great a team to target for fantasy purposes lately. Yesterday against New York was a little bit different because we weren't expecting that game to stay very close anyway. But man, the Knicks are just a dreadful basketball team. This game has the lowest total on the slate, 205, Ben. Boston's a 3-point favorite, 104 implied for them, 101 for the Nuggets. When you start looking at the numbers for these teams, Denver plays at the league's slowest pace. Boston plays at the 9th slowest pace. They both have defenses that rank inside the top 10. Nuggets number 1, Boston number 4. This is a heinous game from a DFS perspective.
Great game in real life, terrible game for DFS. 10-game slate. I think you can avoid this pretty easily if you want to. If you want to be different, I did take a close look at Jokic, 8K flat on DraftKings, but it is a brutal matchup. We know he didn't play a lot of minutes against the Knicks because you don't need to. I still think the ceiling is there, even though it's been a down year. But honestly, that's a tournament, deep pivots. I don't think you need to try to take a shot here if you don't want to. It's such a bad game with 9 others on the slate.
It's really bad. Like you said, in real life, pretty exciting.
Yeah, good game.
Will Barton had been playing like 37 minutes per game. This game was a blowout, so you didn't get it there. Overall, I guess you're right in Jokic. Like, he is going up against Daniel Tice in his canter, so I get that. But I don't know, man. What do we do with Jokic right now? The usage has completely evaporated recently. He's not even getting to the line. Sometimes you say, man, he only shot 10 times, and then you saw he had 12 free throw attempts. You're not even getting that. I don't know what's happened to him. We could talk about like out of shape, but you should be in shape by now. You're a month and a half into the season.
Yeah, no, I mean, I got that excuse and I kind of bought into it, but now I don't know if that's the case. And I will say the one thing, and I don't even know if I like this, they already played, and Jokic had a monster game against the Celtics. He had a triple-double, 18, 16, and 10. I don't know if people will recognize that and funnel themselves to him unnecessarily. But at the same time, I guess on the positive spin, it did show that he can take advantage of this front court, and 8,000 flat is kind of appealing, but it's still hard to go there with this game environment.
Well, I'm willing to move on if you are, unless there's anything else in this one.
No, I think, again, 10 games, that's the one benefit of a large slate. You don't have to dig if you don't want to on a team like this.
For sure. Just looking through the rest of this, I don't see anything. Didn't Carson Edwards start last game over with the injured Marcus Smart? I don't even remember if it was him. It honestly doesn't even matter. So
no, yeah, I mean, Carson Edwards is
there's no value there whatsoever.
Sure.
All right. It's always like to make sure we're hitting on everything, and I think we did. No point in spending our time on games that aren't appealing at all. What about OKC and Minnesota? You had Karl Anthony Towns weighing in at $10,400 on DraftKings. He's $11K on FanDuel, and on Yahoo he's $50. Same price as Anthony Davis, $1 cheaper than LeBron James, and the same price as Andre Drummond. So pricing's kind of wild on Yahoo. The only one of Drummond, Towns, Davis, LeBron, and Giannis Antetokounmpo that's priced way different than them is Giannis, and even I would argue he's too cheap at $58. But here you have it. The Minnesota Timberwolves 2.5-point dogs, 108.9 or 0.8 total, 111.3 implied for the Thunder, 220 over under here. It's actually the fourth highest on the slate. What are your thoughts on OKC, a team that, from a DFS standpoint, has been pretty underwhelming recently?
Yeah, they have, and they kind of do both things I don't like. They're pretty underwhelming, and then they're not awful, especially in the front court with Adams. He can limit guys. He does a pretty good job. I guess if I had to go somewhere, it'd be, he's in the Taurean Prince kind of range. It'd be Gallinari, who's, playing pretty steady minutes. Field goal attempts are there. It's going to be double digits each and every game. A lot of those will be from three. He's not going to give you a ton in peripherals, but, he can rebound the ball at a decent rate. And at that price tag, I think he's a pretty stable mid-range, small forward, power forward eligible type play.
What about, is there anything else for OKC?
Not a ton, really. I mean, if you look at the guards, I'm not too interested in someone like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Schroeder. Is there anyone that stuck out to you that I'm missing? Because for me, it really was just, I don't mind Gallinari at that price tag. I don't see myself going really anywhere else.
No, I mean, Gilgeous-Alexander's price is fine, but he is plummeted back down to earth. He got off to that torrid pace to start the season, and he has crashed back into the dirt. And I just don't think I get there. Chris Paul has seemed wholly uninterested in playing basketball this season. You're looking at him dropping single-digit scoring in 5 of his last 10. Like, it's not there, man. He's not even getting up 10 field goal attempts per game. I know that he's cheaper, but I still have an issue with this. I don't think I get there. As you mentioned, the 10-gamer gives us that luxury of being able to go elsewhere. Schroeder's really been the best one here, at least with some solid games, but now his price tag is so close to those two guys that if I'm going to go to one of them, I'd probably just go with SGA. Yeah,
that's the thing. You're not getting a discount, and Schroeder's minutes are not great. And similar kind of, it's different, but Steven Adams' minutes are not exactly super up there. I don't think he's going to eclipse 30. He's been mega efficient. It almost feels like how much more can he give you? So I get it at that price tag going against Cat, but it's not a team that I think breeds fantasy from either perspective with themselves, and they do enough defensively to stifle their opponents in a pretty good way.
For sure. I would say that Adams on Yahoo at $20 to me is pretty reasonable. Same price as like Harrison Barnes. But you've also got guys like Taurean Prince, who's cheap on Yahoo, same price. You've got Davis Bertans. You've got a lot of these guys, which makes it more difficult because a lot of them are cheaper than they should be. The one advantage to Steven Adams here is you would think they're going to want him on the court for at least 28 minutes against Karl Anthony Towns, but I don't know if he's played 30 minutes he played 30 maybe once or twice this season. It's hard to get there. It's 63 on DraftKings, 7K on FanDuel.
That's what I'm saying. His minutes, it's not even in matchups. Yeah, against your boys 31, but like he's been in the high 20s consistently. And even in a matchup where, yes, they should have him on Cat without foul trouble, I don't know how many more that's going to give him. And so it feels like he's kind of priced into it. You're paying the tax.
Yeah. And that was a overtime game against the Sixers too.
There you go.
Yeah, maybe that was the only one. I'll throw it out there. Gallinari, he's a good basketball player. I just think his ceiling is very limited. Range of outcomes for Gallinari is not that big. I don't have an issue with him against Minnesota, though. He is cheap enough, and it is a good spot. But I'm not enamored with anybody here. What about Minnesota? Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins questionable for this game. A lot of our decisions, at least for this team, could be contingent upon what we get out of Andrew Wiggins' status.
Absolutely. If he sits, Covington is someone who, him well, can rack up the peripherals, can get hot from three. maybe some of those other guys. I don't know who else. I'll pass that back to you of who could slide in if it's Bates Diop or someone else takes those minutes. But we'll have to keep an eye on Wiggins. I don't think I'm going to get to Towns in much capacity, only because Giannis is in the price range, and
Exactly.
I will find the money if I'm even close. So for me, that's really what I'm looking to in this. And just to speak to Gallinari one more time, what I always try to recommend is try to separate. This is what I do. I separate guys into buckets. You have a bucket of lower range of outcomes. Someone like Malcolm Brogdon comes to mind. Someone like Gallinari. Then you have these boom bust guys where it's like, Jonathan Isaac, where it's like he could get 15 or 60.
For sure.
You want to mix and match those to make the right balance. So where I need stability, I'm going to look to someone like Gallinari. If I'm lacking upside on my team, I'm not sure I slide him in there because, as you mentioned, how high is that ceiling when we really look at it?
I know. Like if Gallinari gets you 40, you're excited.
You're ecstatic, yeah.
Yeah, and that's not exactly what you're looking for. With Wiggins off the floor this season, Towns has a 32% usage rate. He's producing 1.73 fantasy points per minute. So if Wiggins is sidelined, my opinion on Karl-Anthony Towns definitely changes. There's no doubt about that. I would have a different opinion there because Andrew Wiggins has been pretty damn solid this year. I noticed changes earlier in the year and tried to track them closely as far as, his assist opportunities went, his usage, his shot selection, and you're seeing, clear improvement from him. He's actually been remarkably consistent. He's also playing huge minutes with big usage. So, if you take Andrew Wiggins, who on the season, I just want to see exactly what his usage rate is. Pretty sure it's got to be around 30%. So his usage is 29.5%. You're taking that off the floor and replacing it with Josh Okogie? Or Bates Diop, as you said, immediately means that Karl-Anthony Towns inherits a even bigger workload because nobody that's going to come in off the bench and fill in for Wiggins is going to be able to shoulder even half of that usage.
No, they're going to soak up the minutes, probably not the usage. One more guy I wanted to mention. Do you have any interest in Culver, who's been playing some minutes? The shots are steady. He could pick up a little more usage if Wiggins sits. I'm a Texas Tech guy, kind of like him in life. Do you have any interest at 5,100?
For me, he's just a little bit too expensive because I don't love the matchup. And again, with 10 games, I probably don't get there. He's $16 on Yahoo. You mentioned 5,100 on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, Culver 52. So I think the 52 on FanDuel is probably the most appealing. But I don't know if you're ever going to get really solid outings from him, but more so that I like to play guys where I feel like they can get to 30 minutes. And I just don't think he can, especially with Jeff Teague getting much of that run off the bench.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guys in this 10 gamer for me that I look to. I don't mind. They are just a fraction overpriced, and it really just clips the ceiling. I may be forced to get to a couple of them, but more often than not, probably not going to get to those peripheral type guys.
That's where I'm at too. Let's talk about the next one on our list, Chicago and Golden State. This is always fun. Two pretty bad basketball teams, but Chicago's at least been competing in a lot of spots. This game has let me pull it up here. So we've got 214 and a half. Bulls 4.5 point favorites, 109.5 implied for them, 105 for the Warriors. The Warriors have got D'Angelo Russell back in the mix. He's probable to play here, his second game since returning. And then Draymond Green, I'm not really going to be projecting him for any more than 25 minutes. I know Steve Kerr said that he'll be pretty much hard capped at 27 this season. I don't even know if he's going to get there. He hasn't since that word came down. But we'll start with the Bulls. If Chris Dunn continues to start here, are you interested in him? And really, what are your thoughts on Zach LaVine and Wendell Carter Jr. and Lauri Markkanen, who has been a colossal disappointment this season?
Yeah, he really has. This is another team. These guys just played, and I guess this is it for them. two bad basketball teams, but a game, pretty good environment if you want to pay up for LaVine. I talked about guys like Dinwiddie and Brogdon. To me, LaVine is a little more boom bust. So if you're looking for a guy who could possibly explode at home against this Warriors team that's a shell of themselves, obviously, I don't mind it. Chris Dunn, yeah, as a salary saver, I think it's all right. But I really, even against a team like Golden State, you mentioned how bad, and he has been bad. Lowry has been, I don't really, even he's sub 6K on DraftKings, I'm not sure I have a ton of interest there. So despite it being a pretty good game environment, there wasn't a ton of Bulls that really jumped off the page to me.
How bad who's been?
Lowry Markkanen.
Oh, yeah. He's been bad. I have a tough time getting there. You know who I do find interesting, though? Even though his price has come up a little bit, bear with me. Satoransky, Thomas Satoransky, said that he needs to be more aggressive late in games, and he's going to start doing that. And I find that interesting. This isn't to say that he's going to be their closer, of course, but Thomas Satoransky said that he's recognized he needs to be more aggressive offensively, especially late in games. He said, obviously, I'm one of those guys who try to fit in, but not very aggressively. I try to read the situation, try to read my teammates, but there's been recognition I have to be more aggressive, especially late in the game. I haven't been shooting it well, but it still opens up spacing when I don't have to just rely on Zach or Laurie. Satoransky, so that's interesting to me. It's, player speak. It doesn't always mean a ton, but if you're going to start seeing 15 field goal attempts per game from him opposed to 9 or 10, that makes him a lot more valuable as someone that's been very involved as a facilitator, giving you 7 or 8 or more assists in 4 of his last 6 games.
Yeah, this is a guy that I'm actually, I remember him in the Wiz. I'm pretty stunned that he's carved out a very prominent role on this team. They have a crowded backcourt when you bring in White and Dunn and obviously LaVine, but he's playing 30 minutes, consistently here. And yeah, if the shot volume comes up, there's no reason that we will see this price tag increase. I think that's pretty clear. And against a Warriors team, you could do worse than that. That's someone, honestly, I haven't dug into a ton, but if he is going to be more aggressive, that kind of is the missing link because the peripherals are pretty good. The minutes are pretty secure, and the matchup is fine.
For sure. Yeah, the matchup's great. Whoever's assigned to him defensively is not going to be a concern. I don't know if Dre's going to be on LaVine or Markkanen or whatever, but Satoransky should have an easy time producing. I don't mind him, especially at $16 on Yahoo. The rest of this team, I'm never opposed to going to Zach LaVine because it seems like he's always underpriced. But I was also disappointed to see that after getting up, 24 shots or more in 3 or 4 games, he goes back to being very, very, he just wasn't aggressive in these last 2 games at all. I know they won, but I hate to see that. So I don't mind him, don't love him. Feel that way about most of these guys. Wendell Carter Jr., if you get him at a good price, I like that he's in line to play 33 minutes every time he's not in foul trouble. But 8K on FanDuel is a massive stretch. And then 22 on Yahoo is a little bit more friendly. 66 is tough on DraftKings. What are you doing with the Warriors?
So, yeah, I'll just echo. I think LaVine, I'm right in line with you there, but he has that boom bust. On the Warriors side, oh, boy, it went bad fast, man. You look at these guys. It's just, I know it's everybody knows this, but my God. So D'Angelo Russell in here, I see probable. Not that I have a ton of interest there, but you look at kind of these front court guys with Pascal, Draymond. Is it bad to say that nothing really stands out there? It's a great game. Let me step back because it's a very good game environment. These guys are reasonably priced. I just have such a tough time with the lack of, fluidity because of injuries. I don't know the pecking order on this team. Draymond is not someone, the last time we did a show, Luffy, you talked about this. Draymond is not someone where all these guys are hurt and it's like, all right, I'm going to take 40 shots
For
now.
sure.
That's not how it works. So who really steps up? And it seems like a revolving door right now, whether it's Pascal or some of these other guys. And that makes it very difficult to project in my eyes.
Absolutely. And they just don't have a lot of players that can get minutes. That's the only reason that a team like this would be interesting to me. I would say D'Angelo Russell, is reasonable here. You know, that the problem is they get blown out so frequently. I don't think that happens here. You know, 4.5 point spread isn't significant, so I don't think that's crazy. But Russell also played. This is my concern. Is he going to be limited too, like Draymond Green? Like, are they limiting him? Because in the first half last game, Russell played only like 11 minutes. Ended up playing 25 minutes here. The game was a little bit out of control towards the end, but he did come back in the fourth quarter. So can I project him for 35 minutes? There's so many guards right now, like Dinwiddie, and I'll even throw Graham out there and a couple more that we'll get to, that, Ben, they are getting 35 to 37 minutes every game. I don't think I can rely on that for Russell.
No, and I would take, if I had to, I would take Zach LaVine on the other side of this game at basically the same price point. On DraftKings, he's $100 cheaper. And it's what you mentioned. There are so many hoops to jump through before we even get the opportunity. Russell needs to get the minutes. They need to not get blown out. And then you have a chance for him to have a big game. All these other guys, we cut that red tape, and it's just, are they going to have a big game? Because everything else kind of checks out on its own.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about this one, this isn't your same Warriors team where they had 3 bench players. Russell's back, Dre is back, and even Kevon Looney's back. It's really a mess now. And even the guys that are kind of appealing, or that were, because they're still getting a ton of run, like Eric Paschall, he's above 6K. So I think you're right. Once you kind of break this down, you find that there isn't that much to like here.
No, and like I said, between, with blowouts, new rotations, so many guys, it's very cloudy, and 10 games, I don't see a ton, and I don't really plan on like stacking this game by any stretch. So that makes it even less appealing.
So here's a fun game, Milwaukee and the Clippers. Before we get to that, I'll let you know that NBA Strategy, all one word. Even if you use Deeper Dive, it would have gotten you to the same place. But NBA Strategy, one word, gets you 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus subscription. Platinum Awesemo Plus, all access, half off your first month. Just use the sign-up code NBA Strategy. Simple enough. Go to awesemo.com/join. Click begin membership. We'll ask you a quick question. What type of player are you? Are you serious? You hobbyist? Professional? We want to make sure that whatever plan you decide on is right for you. You're not getting too little or too much, and you feel comfortable with whatever you're spending. If you go down to the bottom of awesemo.com/join, you'll also see like tutorial videos on all of our best tools, how to use them, and why they are so helpful to anyone looking to win in DFS. So you go to awesemo.com/join. You can check out all of our plans. We even have an express plan at $3.95 a week, $3.95 a week. If you want to dip your feet in before diving in head first, use the sign-up code NBA Strategy. That'll get you 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. That includes ownership projections, player projections, the boom bust tool, top stack tool, and so much more. All of our sports, all of our content, and there's a Fantasy Cruncher add-on as well that you can get upon checking out. That's NBA Strategy. Head over to awesemo.com/join. Welcome, or become part of the Awesemo family. Hit us up in Slack chat when you do. We'll show you around. Ben, Milwaukee Clippers, 232 total, second highest on the slate. 117.8 implied for the Bucks, 114.3 for the Clippers. You know, it's a game where both teams are very solid defensively, ranking 2nd and 7th respectively, the Bucks and Clippers. But the Bucks also play at the league's 2nd fastest pace. Clippers play at the league's 7th fastest pace. Something has to give here. And I don't care if these are good defenses. There's going to be a lot of scoring tonight, and I want in on this game.
This is a great one. Unlike the Celtics and the Nuggets, which I can't wait to watch, I can't wait to watch, and it's a good fantasy game. So I have targets on both sides of this. We mentioned Giannis. I mentioned Paul George earlier. I have a couple other guys as well in this spot. And like you mentioned, yeah, there are some clashing styles, but points are going to be put up in this game. There's no doubt about it. Milwaukee deadly at home. Wouldn't be stunned to see them, 37-4, 38-3 style when it's all said and done in that building. So yeah, I like them. But the guy I want to ask you about, and then I'll pass it back. I think this could be a spot for Chris Middleton, who we haven't seen play a lot of minutes, but I don't know, he's working his way back, but they haven't had to push him at all. if this game stays competitive, I think we may see him bump up, and he's playing very well. The price hasn't adjusted just yet. So he's a sneaky target for me on the box.
Yeah, that's interesting to me, for sure. Much like we talked about earlier, Milwaukee has just been trashing teams lately. I don't think either of us are projecting a blowout here. 3.5 point spread. Middleton hasn't needed to play those minutes. You're absolutely right. He probably gets back above 30 today in a game where they're going to need all hands on deck to beat this Clippers squad. And he's reasonably priced. So I'm with you. I have no problem with that. Bledsoe will see some Pat Bev for sure, but I think he could get up to 30 minutes in this one. I like him, but I really love Giannis Antetokounmpo. 11-3 is just egregiously cheap. 12-3 on FanDuel. I'm still getting to him there. 58 on Yahoo. But I don't know if they preemptively priced him down for the matchup, but 11-3 for a guy that is averaging, right? Not this isn't what he's done over the past couple of days. This is what he's averaging on the season. 1.96 fantasy DraftKings points per minute. It's absurd. I don't care who's guarding him. You can't slow him. You can't stop him. Maybe you can slow him down a bit, but he's still going to crush you in transition. He's still going to destroy you in the paint. He's still going to destroy you on the boards. That price to me is just like a lock it in type play for Giannis for me today.
There's no arguing that. I mean, he is just, it's a perfect combination in the sense of they're coming off 3 straight super blowouts. So his minutes are depressed and it's a tough matchup. So the price is depressed. I don't know why he wouldn't have every opportunity to absolutely smoke this tag. He's matchup proof, so I don't really worry about it. And yeah, at 11-3, pretty easy. Now it will depend. The thing is, as more value opens up, it's going to be a direct funnel to Giannis. That's the one concern.
Sure.
I almost hope that all the value doesn't go because I still will find ways to get to him. But like when Ish Smith becomes, the plug and play that he is, Giannis comes along with that.
Right. That's a good point. It's still going to be tough to get away from him here, man. And hey, he's rested. He hasn't had to play any minutes recently because they're just crushing teams. He's my favorite play on the slate in a vacuum. What about the rest of the Bucks for you?
So, you mentioned Bledsoe. I'm kind of indifferent to the play. I do think that his minutes can approach 30, but like I said, to me, the guy, and I don't know how sneaky it'll be, but I think we're going to see Middleton take a jump up minutes wise here. And at that price, it's an easy buy if he plays, 30-ish minutes in my mind. Efficient player and a great way to get Bucks exposure if you can't get to Giannis.
Okay. I like it. Now, on the Clippers side of the ball, you mentioned Paul George earlier. I'm with you. I think Paul George is a very appealing play here. I think he gets back up to 33, maybe even 35 minutes. They also haven't needed him to play huge minutes lately, but this could be a game where they do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is for both teams. We know these are going to be teams that are looking, they have long-term plans. They're going to be there when the playoffs roll around with top-end seeds. And I think there is an element of playing to that. But this is the type of game both sides, I think, really push it a bit. The minutes are going to be there for their stars. And Paul George are getting a discount off Kawhi. I like him quite a bit here. I think it's my favorite Clipper on the slate. And a great way to fill one of those power forward positions. I have him over a guy like Sabonis, who's in that same area. I would lean Paul George.
Okay. I just think that price on George is way too friendly. I'm with you. As far as the Clippers go, there's a lot of bodies here, right? There's Lou Williams, who is still producing around 30% usage because it's basically him and George and Kawhi, and then to some extent Montrezl Harrell, but to a much lesser extent. Do you have any interest in the rest of this team, Kawhi, or really anybody outside of George that you would consider priorities or at least very appealing plays?
No, not priorities, no. Montrez, I think is fine. He can get going. If the minutes, again, I think will be there, but he's hyper efficient in that, he gets easy targets. He gets easy field goal attempts. So I get it, but 6,500 on DraftKings is priced across the industry. I'm kind of indifferent to, but I'll tell you what, it's Paul George. Then there is a gap. And then there are plays that if you told me I ended up with some Harrell tonight, I wouldn't be super concerned with it, but Paul George far and away my favorite Clipper.
J. Green's almost minimum salary. If he plays, we've seen him go out there and get, 25 minutes, 30 minutes in a 2-point game against Memphis. That's interesting enough for me to say maybe I'll take a couple shots at him at a dirt cheap price point, but only because he's really cheap and might get the run, not because I expect great production on a per minute basis. We got 2 to go, Ben. While you guys are at it, if you enjoy the show, hit us with a thumbs up, like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell as well, so you always know when we're dropping new content. We greatly appreciate you guys hanging out with us every day and supporting Awesemo and all of our live streams and all of our content. San Antonio and Sacramento. This one's really big for me, man. And here's why. First of all, Sacramento is playing at a slow pace this year. Believe it or not, this is actually a pace up spot for them. 215 total. Spurs are 3.5-point favorites with a 109.3 implied, 105.8 for the Kings. What stands out to me, though, is if you take Bogdanović off the court, then Buddy Hield immediately becomes a lot more enticing here. And I think Buddy Hield's not a guy that, if Bogdanović is out there, is going to get a ton of opportunities as a facilitator. But you take him off, and then you're relying on guys like Corey Joseph, who's also questionable, and Yogi Ferrell. It thrusts Buddy Hield into a situation where he's going to have to be productive. He's going to have to handle more responsibilities, bringing the ball up the court and initiating the offense than he has in the past. And to me, that's pretty interesting. In 245 minutes without Bogdanović and Fox this year, 28% usage, 0.98 fantasy points per minute. So nothing spectacular, but I do think in a good matchup, that price is really friendly if Bogdanović sits.
So I'll tell you what, I'm not joking. I have bet the Spurs to miss the playoffs, I think like 5 years in a row, and I've just been punished each and every year. Of course, this year I did not do it. They're just not good. I hate to rain on the Spurs parade. So I'm with you, Buddy Hield. And honestly, when I was looking at him, he reminds me of Bradley Beal in the sense that he's going to play a boatload of minutes. The shots are there. And if you look recently, 3 of 12, 3 of 13, 3 of 13, 3 of 12 from 3. That's a lot of threes and a lot of misses. Now, does that mean he automatically turns it around tonight? No, but the opportunity is there. If he shoots 50% from 3, oh boy, the ceiling is going to be, it's up there. And as you mentioned, if Bogdanović sits, all systems go with Buddy Hield. One of the better plays, price is up there, but he easily can blow it out of the water. And one of my priorities tonight.
He'd be one for me as well. What are you doing with the rest of this game in general?
So again, Buddy Hield, probably my favorite guy. I looked at like Rashawn Holmes quite a bit. Again, a middling price tag. The minutes are there. He can double threat, and he can take advantage, against the Spurs front court. But with so many other options, I don't know exactly where my salary will fall on most teams in terms of grabbing a power forward or center. Then on the other side of the game, for the Spurs, just not a ton. I think DeRozan is always somewhat interesting, and
Aldridge is still questionable.
Okay, yeah, there you go. But like someone like Portal, I really not going to get there, I don't think, too often, honestly. So I don't have a lot to say. And as you mentioned, it's crazy to think this is a pace up spot for the Kings. Like it's just not a great game despite some appealing things, Hield in particular.
Yep. I'm here with you on that one. I'd say DeRozan just hasn't looked particularly good lately. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't even he looks disinterested, honestly. So that sucks. But if Aldridge is out against the King, I still have interest in him. And then I would throw this one out there. If Corey Joseph sits along with Bogdanović, that gets really interesting. Now, if Bogdanović plays and Corey Joseph sits, I think you probably get Bogdanović starting at the point. And Ben, he's 5,400 on DraftKings. He might become the best value on the entire slate if he plays and Corey Joseph sits. Even if he plays and he's not limited, that's a really good price. If both of them sit, just throw this out there at you. Yogi Ferrell's $3,600. He can't be that much worse than Ish Smith. So I think he'd get a lot of minutes if both of them are out.
So yeah, there's a lot of if statements in there. And I know we're doing a lot of that, but I will say, to the people in chat and and it doesn't mean you have to, but if you're like, you know what, Ish Smith's going to be 50% owned, I don't want that. You're probably going to get Yogi Ferrell at a fraction of that ownership. And that could be a way to get some leverage and still allow yourself to have the same build, with the Giannis's of the world.
Especially if we don't have that news before lock.
Absolutely. Yep.
For sure, because that's an 8:30 game. Let's close it out. Portland and the LA Lakers. Ben's coming up next, too. The NFL Strategy Show. Him and Chris Randone going to break down roster construction. Definitely want to stick around for that. Talking week 14, a big 13-game slate, and a lot to digest. Portland and the LA Lakers. This game in Portland. Hopefully LeBron's not running around in his socks again. That was some egregious traveling, too. Did you see that video?
I did. Quinn Snyder and the entire they were aware. I don't know what the ref was really looking at. Very confused.
Yeah, Tim says Bogdan is still hurt. Don't play him. Well, no, that's what I'm saying. If he plays and we find out that he's fine, then fine. But if we know that he's still going to be limited, which he was limited, then I'm not going near him. I think he's not going to play. I think he's going to be out again. I think they're going to wait till he's back completely healthy. So what else are you thinking here? Well, really, what are you thinking with Portland in a game that has a 222.5 total? Lakers 4-point favorites in Portland.
So, I mean, anytime you've got guys like Anthony Davis and LeBron hovering sub 10K, around 10K on DraftKings, I get it. But when you're talking in a 10 game, it's not in a vacuum anymore. You have to weigh these plays against what you're doing elsewhere. Giannis is far and away a priority over these guys. Guys like Buddy Hield and Paul George are priorities over these guys, and I would rather take the savings. So by that, this game is full of guys that I don't mind, but I have multiple priorities ahead of each one at each price point. And that's kind of how I feel. I mean, AD could end my slate early, so be it. I don't think I'm going to be able to jam him and Giannis in too many lineups.
No, it's a good point. Do you have any interest in say, Damian Lillard at 8,500 or McCollum or Carmelo Anthony, who I say that somewhat in jest, but he's actually been good.
Yeah, we'll see how old Melo. He has looked okay. I mean, CJ McCollum is the same thing. I think he's fine, but you have Brogdon, you have Buddy Hield, you have Zach LaVine. These are all guys that I kind of like ahead of him. And then in terms of Lillard, he's just a little more expensive. You have Dinwiddie right there, a guy that I think these guys are all priorities to me. So maybe I'll get a sliver because we know how good this should be a good game too, but doesn't really do much for me in terms of moving the needle.
It doesn't. Whiteside's been really good, but there are some solid center plays that'll probably be getting over him. Ultimately, man, for me, it's basically just LeBron and Davis, but with Giannis not being priced that high above them, they're going to be secondary options to me and not primary. Now, it's also possible that depending on what value opens up, we could be looking at like legitimate stars and scrubs lineups today where you could play Giannis and Davis and have, two guys below 4K that are both projected for 25 plus fantasy points. That's definitely in the cards.
Absolutely. And I'll just real quick with Whiteside in particular. Yes, he can, he's the type of guy, he can rack up a ton of blocks, but he's also, I think, a pretty poor defender. So like AD is going to have his way, in my opinion. It's not a knock on anything matchup wise. It's just a fact that if, say there's no value, I'm only going to have the chance to take one of these guys. And Giannis is absolutely at the top of my list.
No question. Portland allowing the most second chance points this year, allowing quite a bit of points in the paint, put back opportunities. Anthony Davis should be able to dominate them around the basket, in the paint, and in the post. I'm with you. I guess that'll do it for us, Ben.
Fun times, as always. Thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. 10 games up, 10 games down. Deeper dive with Adam Scher and myself will be coming up at 5 p.m. today for anything that you missed. And then the Live Before Lock take you up till 7 after that. Ben, you're coming up next on the NFL Strategy Show. And then you've got the betting show coming up following that, huh?
And then I'm going to Chick-fil-A. So I have three major things coming up. But yeah, me and Manny Laura are coming at you. And
it's Manny. That's right.
Yeah. Come on, your boy. A couple of minutes. So stay tuned. I will be right back.
Very jealous. I would love a chicken sandwich with pepper jack cheese, some pickles, some Polynesian sauce, and some waffle fries. Oh, man.
I'm not joking. That is my order. Spicy chicken deluxe, waffle fries, a little sauce.
Look at that. See, but I don't do the spicy chicken deluxe. I do a chicken sandwich with pepper jack because I don't like the lettuce on it. It's a little too much for me. It's a little smothering. Anyway, thanks for hanging out. If you enjoy the show, hit us with a thumbs up. We'll see you back here next time on the NBA Strategy Show presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports.